It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben here on this Wednesday. Plenty to get to here on the show. We'll talk with Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, some NBA. We are getting close to the All-Star weekend. We'll look at the NBA coming up here at the break and what they're looking forward to here in the second half of the season. Also, home team Brandon Leak will join us. We'll talk about the Hawks specifically. Hawks struggling here in the first half. Trae Young, not an all-star. Was he snubbed? We'll talk to home team about that coming up in hour number 2. Plus, just a wild story there out of Valdosta involving their head football coach, Russ Probst. So we'll get to that coming up in the second hour of the program as well. But right out of the gate, Tiger Woods. We talked certainly a lot about that yesterday. They had a press conference right after the show with the LA Police Department, who were talking about the incident. Then Tiger's team released a statement from the medical team that operate on him. Compound fractures of his fibula and tibula, rod in his leg, screws in his foot and ankle to get it back stable. But he is awake and is in stable condition. And will still require multiple surgeries to get him back going in the right direction. But I guess the good news there is Tiger Woods is still with us and looks to be on a road to recovery, though it's going to be quite some time.
Yeah, I think everybody should be grateful that it wasn't worse than it was. When you look at some of the footage from the wreck, just absolutely terrifying, but very serious. Very concerning. Kind of medical phraseology, Kevin, when you read some of this stuff, bones that were broken in more than 2 pieces with breaks in the skin. This is from the story on ESPN.com. You're talking about, I guess, a situation where surgeons had to, quote, release the covering of the muscles to relieve pressure due to swelling. I mean, this is terrifying stuff. So grateful that, relatively speaking, Tiger's medical situation is stable. I know a lot of people in the golf world have said, hey, right now our 100% focus is supporting Tiger Woods, being there for him. We're not worrying about golf. Let's not even talk about golf. Let's not even speculate about golf. And I think that's the right call right now. Just a traumatic car accident. And I think right now for Tiger, clearly, the priority is getting healthy, getting back to where you can do normal things and, being around your family and friends, and then golf will come, and you can pursue that and chase that. But yeah, just a crazy story that hit, yesterday early, and we were all trying to kind of react to it without a ton of details. And now you have kind of a clearer sense of medically what Tiger's dealing with. And Ben, needless to say, it's a lot.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, when people ask, like, the road to recovery for a guy like Tiger Woods, who's already in his mid-40s, who was coming off back surgery. He was having to deal with that. Now you got to add this to it. Tiger Woods is the equivalent of Tiger Woods is a foot. He's a golfer that has a football player's body. That's what he's dealing with right now. When people say football is a car wreck, well, he was literally in one, and this is what his body is dealing with because of it. I mean, great job by the medical staff. I mean, when you talk about the fact that when Kevin goes back to yesterday, that EMT comes on the scene, they got to ask, "What's your name?" Tiger. Like Tiger Woods, get him out with the jaws of life. Obviously, you're happy that he's doing well, but this road to recovery was going to be rough without this car wreck. Now you talk about compound fractures and, releasing muscle. I got to release the muscle just so I could go in and do surgery. So yes, we are happy that Tiger Woods is okay. We wish him nothing but the best. We still send nothing but speedy recovery to him. But take your time, Tiger, because like I said, I get it. Hey, man, it's going to be a great comeback story when Tiger Woods gets back out there on the golf course. Well, if he never does, I think the fact that he's healthy and he's getting better, to me, that's way more important. But, yeah, man, shout out to Tiger Woods, man, because that's a lot to deal with.
And, again, the L.A. Police Department saying they did not expect or did not suspect. I knew I had messed a word up in there. Did not suspect that impairment was a cause for the crash. So I know a lot of people had speculated because, well, that's what the internet and social media does. But police department saying they did not suspect that was a cause of the accident. So we'll have more on that certainly as we go throughout the show. But A lot of Atlanta fans upset last night as we move forward here. Trae Young not selected to the All-Star team. It kind of interesting the way this all played out, right? Trae Young not selected to the All-Star team, and then while playing the Cavs, a lot of people saying didn't let the shot clock run down in the game, took a rush shot, and then basically no defense at the end of the game by Trae Young and, well, the rest of the Hawks team, and gave up a layup with time running out to lose the game to the Cavaliers. But a lot of folks upset saying, look, he should be there, not on the All-Star squad. Oh, by the way, game, even though no fans are going to be there, game is in Atlanta.
Yeah, probably should be on the team when you look at the stats. I mean, he's averaging 27 and 10. And I am not an NBA historian, but I don't know how many guys have averaged 27 points and 10 assists per game. That's pretty striking. And I know we're in an era of advanced stats, and you know, some of the plus minuses may be a little different. And clearly, I think everybody knows that defense is not a strong suit for Trae Young. We know that he has to improve there. But
yeah,
Kevin,
not strong suit is that's the bar pretty high. I mean,
well,
it's terrible.
Sure, but I think you have a lot of guys who have been kind of go-to scorers that either shoulder the direct scoring load or the load of being the distributor that don't always have that same efficiency at the other end of the floor. I don't know that this is like unheard of. To me, I wonder if it's more of a team reflection. And you see with all kinds of awards, whether it's awards in college football or, all-stars at the next level in the pro ranks, if you're on a bad team, and let's be honest, the Hawks are bad, and they've had guys get hurt, and they've been shorthanded, but the Hawks are bad. If you're on a bad team, I think it's harder to contend for awards, whether it's things like the MVP or even things like being on the all-star team. So I think that definitely plays a role in it, right or wrong.
Yeah, but the thing is, BJ, too, we can't keep looking past it. I mean, Trae Young, yes, Trae Young is a big name in the NBA. He's not one of the biggest names. He's not one of the faces of the NBA. And that kind of stuff factors in. When people goes, what is the difference in getting voted in and not voting in? Are you a guy that's been snubbed for the last 5 or 6 years and you just balling out of control? I mean, Julius Randle. I mean, he's an all-star, but he's gotten better over time. When we say Atlanta's bad, no. They're bad. And think about Trae Young. He's a good player on a really, really bad team, and he need the benefit of the doubt. If he played defense a little bit, just a little bit, he probably would have had a chance to get in. But Trae Young is a reflection of what is not going on in Atlanta right now, and you on a franchise. And how long have we been talking about rebuild? And if he didn't get voted in, and it's in Atlanta. I mean, they try to vote in a hometown dude just cause, but at the same time too, I know we're gonna get to it. Who do you leave out if you put him in? Because it's not as if the position he plays isn't loaded with guys that can go out there. So putting the ball in the basket is one thing. Being on a bad team is another thing. And trying to be a big name and a big face, I think he just had too many things working against him on a team that's in the East and still trying to find a way to scratch and claw to get W's.
Well, I think that's the interesting part there, BJ. You said, look, the numbers look good, but as Ben said, who do you take off? And guys that are doing similar things on teams that are productive. Again, if you had more all-stars from teams that were 13 and 18, I think you'd be going, why is that team 13 and 18? If you have that level of play on your roster. So I think it's a combination of both. I don't know who you would take off and say, yes, just clear cut, he should be there. Instead of guy X on the All-Star team. But I think the fact that guard play is deep in the NBA and the fact that you're on a team that's 13 and 18.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with it, I think.
Well, I think too, Kevin, another factor we have to put in there is the NBA coaches could have voted him in. You can't vote for your own players, but the NBA coaches could have voted him in, and they didn't think enough of his game to do that.
And in terms of who do you take off, I mean, it's tough because circumstances are different, and just kind of raw, blind statistical comparisons don't come with a lot of nuance. I mean, maybe you can make an argument that he deserves to be in over. You mentioned Julius Randle, Ben, maybe Jaylen Brown, maybe. Although these guys are really proficient, even if their macro numbers aren't off the charts. So I think it's a compilation of a number of different things. Like Kevin mentioned, defensively, you've really struggled. You're on a team that has very much underwhelmed. And I do think there are some reasons for that. But the bottom line is, you're not going to be on one of the NBA's worst teams and get credit for being one of the NBA's best players. That's just the way it works. And some of the advanced stats, I was looking at the player efficiency, numbers for Trae, they're really good, but his real plus minus is not very good. He's not even one of the top Atlanta Hawks in that statistical category. And some of that stuff's a little abstract to me. It's hard to directly correlate individual performances to kind of a plus minus that involves a lot of different factors. But I think the Hawks just have to play better. The Hawks have to win. When you win, it makes everything else improve, whether it's the perception of your organization or the perception of the individual players within that organization. You got to win. And right now, the Atlanta Hawks are not.
And the whole factor is, I mean, Devin Booker didn't get in. I mean, I know we're talking about Trae Young. Devin Booker didn't get in. Trae Young don't have a shot to get in. I just think he's got to play much better than he has been.
Again, we'll talk to Brandon Scoopy Robinson about that coming up in about 20 minutes here on the program. We'll look at the All-Star break, where the NBA is. Still don't have the second half schedule out to the public as of yet. What is the league looking to do in the second half of the season, especially with the supposed changing dynamics of society, I guess, in terms of the coronavirus moving forward into the April, May, June months of the calendar, especially. So we'll talk to Brandon Scoopy Robinson about that. Home Team Brand Elite coming up at the top of our number 2. It is 3 and Out. We'll talk a little college football, though, when we return, and we're all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Brandon Scoop B. Robinson now will join us coming up in about 15 minutes here on the show. But first, we talk a little college football here on the show, looking ahead to 2021. And there's a lot of running back talent out there. Who has the best running back room in the country? And certainly there's a lot of them to choose from that have not just one, but two or three running backs that could suggest that they need a lot of touches in their respective offenses.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you talk about the running back position, I don't care what season it is, you're going to talk about Georgia. Georgia is the national standard. I think Georgia's running back and then you look at Zamir White coming back. I mean, what's amazing about Georgia is Zamir White averaged almost 5.5 yards per carry last year, had 11 rushing touchdowns, and a lot of people are saying, hey, man, he might not get 10, 15 touches in 2021 when you think about James Cook and Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton and I mean just the young talent that's there that's always coming in. But I think there are a couple of other programs in the SEC worth mentioning. You guys know that I think Kevin Harris is completely underappreciated nationally and underrated, the running back out of Bradwell Institute who had a monster year for South Carolina last season. I'm trying to get his exact stats pulled up. Kevin Harris led the SEC with 114 yards rushing per game. That's more than Najee Harris, and had 15 rushing touchdowns, averaged over 6 yards per carry. I mean, that is an All-American type season. And Marshawn Lloyd, who was expected to be one of the big go-to guys for South Carolina last year, missed the season due to injury. He's a 5-star. So you look at South Carolina, you have an All-American in Kevin Harris is your starter and a blue-chip 5-star prospect in Marshawn Lloyd as your backup. I think that is a really good group. Then I look at Texas A&M. Isaiah Spiller had over 1,000 yards last year. He really emerged as kind of a workhorse back late in the season. Devon Achane, if you watch the Orange Bowl, he had a $140 and 2 rushing touchdowns against North Carolina. He's the backup and was a star in the Orange Bowl. And then Texas A&M has kind of I hate to use this comparison, but kind of a Percy Harvin type playmaker in Aeneas Smith who lines up in the slot but also plays running back some. I love the talent there. Alabama with Brian Robinson and Tenpenny. And look, they're going to be right there. The SEC, to me, being year in and year out, has the best collection of running backs in college football. And even look at Florida for this fall. I think this year is going to be the ultimate example of that.
Yeah, even starting with Georgia, though, BJ, the whole thing about it is the reason why Zamir White to get looked over by averaging 5 yards a carry and having 11 touchdowns is the running back room. They just didn't lead the way as far as like the offense, what we grown to love about, what Georgia does on offense. But then you talk about Harris in South Carolina. I think he doesn't get the recognition because they won't judge him. They judge him collectively and not individually what he does. I mean, another running back room, BJ, that I think is going to garner a lot of attention. It's going to have to be by committee. I think it's going to be Auburn. I think Tank Bigsby is a really, really good back. I think he was ranked as far as like a usage and like effectiveness. I think he was ranked like 3rd in the nation, ranked like top 40 as far as like what he did. But I do agree when you look at what these SEC schools are going to want to do, it's going to be running back by committee. If I'm Zamir White, maybe he knows something that I don't, because you're talking about bad enough. You're talking about 2 guys. 5 guys, but yeah, I do. I mean, we're not even talking about Clemson, BJ. They're going to have 2 or 3 backs that's going to be really, really good. I think North Carolina is going to be hurt a lot with that much production leaving. I know you mentioned my Florida Gators getting a guy like Bowman to go along with Lingard and those guys and Damian Pierce. Can they prove it? Because some of these teams got good rooms, talent-wise. Production-wise is a total different thing. So I do agree. I do think Georgia's going to lead the way. We'll get to see those running back room first game of the season with Georgia and Clemson starting out the season. But I just think for me, when you look at the most effective rooms is going to be guys that's going to have to go out there and lead the way. Tank Bigsby and Auburn, to me, got a shot to be the cream of the crop, because I think when you look at what they want to do on offense, because they got Bo Nix, they're going to want to let the offense be ran through the run game. So watch out for them running backs. And at Auburn, I'm pretty sure Ronnie Brown, those guys going to be hitting me up. They're going to say, the BJ say Georgia was running back you there. Yeah, it's at BJ Bennett Sports, you know what I'm saying, on Twitter. But yeah, I'm looking forward to those SEC schools to lead the way.
Well, first off, you got my Twitter handle wrong. It's at C. Gokel ESPN. I mean, isn't that my Twitter?
I think it's at Business and Grace.
totally wrong.
Close.
What is it?
I think you actually left out two letters. You're
it's
not
just-
even close.
No, it's just Go Kelly ESPN.
All right, that's
I'm
close
thinking
enough.
of
That's pretty good.
I
Listen,
was totally wrong.
another team that I think is really good in the backfield
Instagram, Cam.
is Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's got a really talented running back room as well. I mean, everybody in the state of Georgia Southern, Georgia, but I think Georgia Tech's got a really good group, and so much young talent that you forget about some of the veterans. Jordan Mason was a really productive player who's still there on the depth chart. You think about Gibbs and you think about Griffin. I mean, those guys, in terms of highly recruited, 1-2 backs, that's a tandem that stacks up with just about anybody. Two former state players of the year in the state of Georgia at the running back position. So I'm a big fan of what Georgia Tech has. But yeah, I do think, look, man, Auburn is right there. But I do think when you talk about not only this fall but just the history, I think Georgia's the standard. I do. And this group, I mean, Christian, are you going to see a situation where instead of 2 backs sharing the load, you see 4 backs kind of rotationally for the Dogs?
I think you see James Cook kind of in the Alvin Kamara role where he's very much the pass catcher out of the backfield. I think he's the most dangerous running back. I still think Zamir White sees the bulk of the carries just because that's what happened last year. But I do think the number 2 in that situation is really going to be Kenny McIntosh. If you see somebody else come out there, it's going to be Kenny McIntosh. I think the rest of the guys just have to understand you take a back seat to it. Those are the 3 guys who are going to be the guys. And if they need a breather, you want some situational stuff, yeah, you can put some other guys in there. But you have all those guys and then all those receivers and tight ends you have to feed. I think I'd start with those 3, find the hot hand there, and then just tell the other guys, look, they're just good.
Yeah, but Christian, who's going to have that DeAndre Swift type impact to where, I mean, to me, and I'm not saying he's
I'll
the
say
reason
this,
why-
Ben, there's not a DeAndre Swift in that room. I mean, Zamir
No.
White.
I'm not. I'm talking about when DeAndre Swift came in. Obviously, when he burst on the scene with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, obviously he was that change of pace back, but he also had probably the best hands, coming out the backfield that year. Take nothing away from Sony Michel. Is there a running back that's saying, look, I'm not going to get on the field just by my running ability. I'm going to have a niche to get me out there. And even if the defense knows what I'm doing, I just do it better than everybody else in the room at this time.
Well, your first thought is James Cook there, right? It's he's the guy out of the backfield. But I think the thought with that is he's just so dangerous when you get on the ball out of the backfield. I think the running back with the best hands was Kenny McIntosh. When Georgia needed a game-winning drive in the Peach Bowl, it wasn't James Cook. It wasn't Zamir White that was out there. It was Kenny McIntosh. And he caught, the most devastating route in college football is the running back out of the backfield, in my opinion, just because you're thinking about everything else, and here comes a running back. And it was 3 passes to Kenny McIntosh, boop, boop, boop. JT Daniels, Kevin, even said it after the game. He's like, it wasn't that impressive of a drive. I just threw the ball to Kenny McIntosh 3 times and we kicked a field goal. So
you're the guy that makes plays.
Yeah,
right?
so I think he's a big one. But the one we're not even talking about, who might be the best inside the tackle runner for Georgia and who might see the bulk of the carries is Kendall Milton. He got a little banged up last year, but when they were playing Alabama in Tuscaloosa, it was Kendall Milton and Zamir White who were carrying a bulk of the load.
Yeah, and again, I think that for Georgia, that's a good problem. That's a good problem.
You say that, but do you have to handle it correctly, right?
No,
because
I think you'd rather be in their position than a lot of teams. You're like, this is my guy. If he goes down,
well, yeah, you'd rather have this problem than that. But
has Georgia not handled that relatively well since Kirby Smart has been there in terms of making sure guys understand the rules?
I don't know that it's been this deep, right? Because when he got there, this is 6-7 deep now. When he got there, it was, you knew it was Sony Michel, you knew it was Nick Chubb because they're historically great running backs. Both of them arguably should have been, Sony Michel was, Nick Chubb probably should have been a first-round pick. So it's just, they were that good. And then DeAndre Swift, like Ben said, was the change of pace back. Those 2 guys leave. It was clearly DeAndre Swift was the best running back. He was going to get 90% of the carries. Brian Herrien was going to split the rest, and then some younger guys in there. Now you have 5 guys who I would argue are equally as good as each other. You have to manage that correctly, because if you don't, that's when your offense gets into a funk.
You have to go earn your carries.
Well,
obviously,
I think you're just going to have to look at some guys and say, we have to rock with a hot hand. Not everybody's going to get the same amount of carries. If Kenny McIntosh is ripping off 7 yards of carry in a game, we're going to keep handing it to him.
Are you willing to do that week to week?
Yeah,
I know.
mean,
I'm saying.
what
I'm
we
saying
see
as
is
a coach,
Saturdays. What we see is
vis-a-vis guys
Saturdays.
who are like, look, I'm not getting carries.
They're
I'm gonna-"
playing every single day. They're playing against one of the top 3 defenses in the country, Monday through Friday. And so you figure out who the best guy has been that week and you let him rock. It's not necessarily who had the best Saturday the last Saturday. It's Monday through Friday, who's been the best guy.
I'll say this, Kevin. I love the depth. I think you could do that, and I think you will do that to a certain extent. But I also think, going back to your original take, Christian, I think you're going to see Zamir White, at least early on, be more of a focal point than maybe people think. Quietly had a really good year last year. I think he's got a lot left still.
We shall see. We'll come back. We'll switch gears. We'll talk with Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. NBA coming up on the All-Star break. Where does that leave the NBA as they get ready for the second half? All-Star snubs and more. He'll join us next here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out here on this Wednesday, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you're with us here on the show. Also streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. You can catch us live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well here. No reason why you can't catch 3 and Out each and every day. NBA coming up on the All-Star break here at the end of next week. And joining us here, host of Scoop B Radio, Brandon Scoop B Robinson joins us here on 3 and Out. Brandon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Man, I'm doing good. How are you?
Hey, we're doing fantastic as the NBA comes up here to the All-Star break. Obviously, 2020, 2021, nothing is easy, and a lot of NBA players speaking out about even having the All-Star weekend. What say you, and why has this become so important to the NBA to make it happen?
Money makes the world go round. And I think at the end of the day, you know the rest. But I think it comes down to the financial portion there. It comes down to the NBA encouraging or getting fans back into the day-to-day of coming into an arena. You saw Brooklyn house a small number of fans, the Nets, when they played the Sacramento Kings last night. And, you know, you saw the same thing in Madison Square Garden last night across the way where, you know, the Knicks played host to the Golden State Warriors. And so when you look at just fan base and wearing masks and, you know, being tested, that's a small percentage size of what New York can do, specifically because of just how much that was the epicenter. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, you look at Atlanta. Atlanta it has allowed fans in. I mean, you've seen fans sit courtside. You see fans kind of joining at LeBron James a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, when I look at just the grand scheme of what's going on with the NBA, you know, it's a start. But on the other side of the coin, you know, people that I've spoken with, there are players who don't want to play. You know, there are players who, you know, are trying to be accommodating to the collective bargaining agreement and between the Players Association and the owners because they want to be able to have a fair deal when the next negotiation comes about. So there's a lot of give and take, but there are people who are happy. I spoke with Zach LaVine of the Chicago Bulls this morning. He's happy. He's ecstatic, you know, that he's a first-time All-Star. So, you know, there are many different perspectives with COVID somewhere in the middle.
In your mind, what has been the biggest storyline here in the first half of the NBA season?
The biggest storyline since the first half of the season, the Brooklyn Nets are definitely a story, specifically because of the acquisition of James Harden and how they've been able to, you know, turn things around from, you know, the beginning of the season where, you know, we had questions about Kyrie Irving and his whereabouts and all those other things. I think the other storyline is the Lakers and Anthony Davis and the injuries. You know, many people think that the Nets and the Lakers are preview matchups for, you know, the NBA Finals. So, you know, there's a lot of storylines there, as well as, you know, how well the New York Knicks are doing right now.
And Scoop, I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit when you were saying how, like, the players, you got players that don't want to play, you got players that do want to play, you got guys like Bradley Beal and Julius Randle, you know, first-time All-Stars, but you got guys like, well, you got the biggest star, LeBron, who came out and said, I didn't want to play, but at the same time, I'm willing to put that to the side for the greater collective of my brothers in the NBA. Where is the NBA right now as far as like them and the players would understand that the players thought it wasn't going to be an all-star game, but like you mentioned, I mean, things change and it obviously has changed throughout the course of the season to have the all-star game now.
Well, yes, true. I think what you said is insightful. You know, when LeBron James said something, the league listened. You look at a couple years ago where there were issues with, you know, teams using the word owner as it relates to the person who was in charge of a team, who has a majority stake in the team. You now hear people say governor because of the connotation there. So, you know, LeBron was very vocal about that. Draymond Green was vocal about that. And I think those two gentlemen, both represented by Clutch, Rich Paul's agency, when those two gentlemen speak, they listen. So, you know, when you look at just LeBron and how he feels, there are other guys who feel that way. You know, you look at, even from the perspective of what was going on with the bubble going into before they went in the summertime where, you know, Kyrie Irving was vocal about that. And there were players who publicly and privately agreed with him. And then when you saw what was going on in Kenosha and players were sitting down and refuse to play. You see that players have a voice and they control the narrative, because if they don't play, they don't make any money. But the difference here is, now it's not so much about fans. It's about fans, but it's not. But the fans being in the stands is a smaller, it's one portion of it. The other part is sponsorship dollars. You try to, kind of salvage what you can with the season by playing the All-Star game and getting sponsorship. And, I know that the NBA had very high ratings last year during the All-Star game because of the way that they played that game in tribute to Kobe. One person wearing 24 in tribute to Kobe, the other team who wearing number 2 in tribute to his late daughter, Gigi. And, you had all of that there. But I think what's different is the abbreviated season or the abbreviated All-Star weekend that'll be. You have the 3-point shootout before the All-Star game. You have the slam dunk contest, and then you have the game in between. And I think that when you just look at LeBron speaking his piece, a lot of that has to do with just mental health. A lot of players have been stuck pretty much at home or in a bubble for the last year, and with no cure inside. Well, the cure is here, or the vaccine is here, but just figuring out how to move around your day to day. I mean, can't hang with all of your family and friends and more. So I think LeBron is voicing how he feels. Kyrie voiced how he feels. Draymond Green has voiced how a lot of players are feeling. It's a lot.
Brandon Scoopy Robinson Jordan is here on 3 and Out. And Brandon, as we get ready for All-Star Weekend, obviously the first thought is who got in and who didn't, who was maybe, if there was any, an egregious pick that was not made.
Devin Booker. Devin Booker should have made it. And because Anthony Davis has the likelihood of not playing because of his Achilles injury and more, he'll be in. But then some people will make the argument, do 2 members of the Suns deserve to be in it? Chris Paul was already in, but then you look at the Nets, who are doing well. They have 3 guys, 2 that were voted in, 1 by the fans and 1 who was voted in by the coach. But I'm glad Julius Randle is in. I think he's been playing exceedingly and abundantly well this season for the New York Knicks. I probably think the only other two people, Tobias Harris of the Philadelphia 76ers. And then some people make the argument, well, I know this is local Georgia, it's for you guys, and I'll say this, you look at Bradley Beal, and you make the argument, well, should he be in it because of the Wizards' record? And, then you can point at Trae Young from last season where, the Atlanta Hawks didn't have a winning record, and, he was voted in as a starter, if I'm not mistaken. Some people have those arguments there. So there's things to look at. I think Damian Lillard should have been a starter over Luka Doncic, in my opinion. But, Luka played very well against the Boston Celtics last night. Hit a game winner. So a lot of things you can argue, but I'm glad that will still be entertained in some form while we're home.
Scoop, the National Basketball Association Coaches Association came out and was critical, expressed, quote, concern and a level of disappointment, end quote, with the Minnesota Timberwolves and how their coaching change transpired. What can the NBA do, or what can organizations do to ensure that there are more thorough and legitimate and diversified interviews for minority candidates?
I think a lot of it has to do with representation within front offices. You look at the NBA front office people that I can think of that are of color. Yeah, Gerson Rosas of the Timberwolves is Hispanic. You do have Elton Brand as the general manager of the 76ers. He's African American, and there are some other cases there. Doc Rivers has held a role in addition to being the head coach of the Clippers in the past. But a lot of it is who you know. You look at Elton Brand as an example. He went to Duke. He networked well. He learned the game. That's why he's in the position he's in. But he also got into that position after the embarrassing stuff that went on with the Twitter scandal with that happened when they got rid of the former general manager. But he still maintains a high-ranking position. He traded to get Jimmy Butler, and he has a decent track record. But, when you look at the situation more specifically with what happened with the Minnesota Timberwolves, it's a slippery slope. And I say that because David Vanterpool is someone that I've gotten to know over the last year, somebody that's very well respected, not only just as an assistant coach in player development, but more specifically, he's respected by the players. And a lot of players, when you become a player's coach, your name goes and shoots up the ranks. And not just the fact that he was a player development coach, but he also worked in the front office with the Oklahoma City Thunder under Sam Presti, and still has a very good relationship with Sam Presti. I know that, when you look at the person who was brought in to replace Ryan Saunders, Chris Finch, just like David Vanterpool, was interviewing for just about every vacant coaching job during the offseason. I know the Pacers, I know the Thunder, I know the Rockets, all, as well as the Bulls, all were interviewing Vanterpool and Chris Finch. I know there's something in the water in Toronto with the Raptors, or currently in Tampa, where they wanted to hire, where just everybody gets a job out of Toronto. It's like the new San Antonio, it seems. But I think as it relates to Chris Finch, I know he and Rosas have a prior relationship. I spoke with David Vanterpool actually yesterday, and he's in high spirits. They were in Milwaukee, and I think it's a very disappointing situation because Vanterpool is somebody that a lot of players respect. You look at player development, guys that are coming up the ranks, Jay Hernandez out in Charlotte, and others, need to be, and he's Hispanic, need to be looked at. Irv Rowland, who worked with the Rockets for years, he was let go as an assistant coach, in Houston a couple of years ago. Representation has to be there where you're not just hiring coaches, but you're hiring people in front office positions. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Masai Ujiri over in Toronto as well, who was in a front office position. He's a person of color. But I think the NBA does have a problem with representation, not just in front office, but also in media. And these people who hire, they hire who they know. And oftentimes those people in those hiring positions may not know somebody who's Black or Hispanic or Asian or LGBT plus. They know what they know. And, for Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream to not judge someone by the color of their skin, by the content of their character, I would imagine that we need to add in sports that you don't do it just because people are complaining, but you should do it because they're actually good at what they do. We African Americans and people of color are more than just entertainers. They are thinkers, and they need to be treated as such.
And Scoop, even to that regard, though, the whole thing about it is you talk about the fact that who's gonna push that forward. I understand you got MJ with Charlotte. I understand that people are gonna look at the debacle that didn't happen when Magic Johnson was in the front office with the Lakers. Who's gonna be that next guy? Because the whole thing about it is, you know how it is, Scoop. They looking for one guy to either devalidate everybody or to validate all of us. So who you think is gonna be that guy that's gonna be unavoidable to say, all right, I'm in the front office position. I'm gonna go out there and do what was done in Toronto, but I'm a big enough name to where you can't push me to the side, or dare I say, have a security guard that work at the freaking facility, not letting me come and join my team. We just won the NBA Finals.
Well, I always say the only thing that needs to be validated is parking, and I think that ownership. It starts at ownership. Like you look at Michael Jordan, he's the only majority owner in the NBA. But from my perspective, it's good to have someone who used to play in a front or in an ownership position that can advocate for players, yes. But I think it's a slippery slope, and I don't know that I'm necessarily qualified to answer that, because I think that when it comes down to front office, you look at, as much as people give James Dolan crap, he has put a lot of people of color in position, or hired. I won't even say put in position. I say he's hired people of color. You look at Isaiah Thomas in the front office role. You look at Allen Houston in the front office role. And he's given other people like Larry Johnson jobs and Latrell Sprewell jobs. But then when you look at situations like in Atlanta, where Danny Ferry said what he said about Luol Deng. He sits out for a while, and then you recycle him, and he goes somewhere else. People often use the good old boys term, and for context, someone like Danny Ferry may fit that mold because he went to Duke, like I mentioned, Elton Brand. So those positions where you keep hiring the same old guys, I think, just like in coaching, you figure something out. Now I feel like they're hiring guys that maybe aren't named as head coaches, and you bring in European guys that are highly recommended, like almost like in the same vein that Cleveland hired David Blatt. So when you look at front office people, you kind of use that European approach too. Like, who are the guys that are talented, who are Hispanic, who are African American, who are Asian, who are LGBT plus? I mean, daggone it, like, we talk about people of color not being hired. Like, it's ceremonial when you talk about Becky Hammon being a woman coach. Like, if we're going to be progressive, it should just be black. It should be woman, and not just doing things for people of race or color because of the climate we're in, but because that's the right thing to do. Not just because sometimes when you hire somebody based off a relationship, you may be hurt more than the person that, you know. I just think it's a difficult thing to just give one answer to, but I think in the case of David Vanterpool, this should be a conversation. In the case of Becky Hammon, this should be a conversation. I'll never forget some years ago when Stephen A. Smith was hired at Mad Dog Radio over at Sirius. And I remember Mad Dog Russo saying, in this day and age, I don't know anybody who is of color, particularly African American, who can be a radio host on my network. And they went and hired Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith has came and left. He did what he was supposed to do. He's always been a strong voice. But with that being said, Stephen A. Smith is not the voice of black people. There's so many other people that have voices that are diverse, that speak to more than just black people, who speak to more than just white people, who can speak to the man on the moon. So I think diversity shouldn't just be a buzzword. It should be something delivered with action.
Brandon
So what'd you say?
I'm sorry, we are up against the break. I wanted to let you know we have to step out. I appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
We'll come back with more 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here on 3 and Out all across the Southern Big Skin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're with us here on this Wednesday. A lot to get to this hour. We'll take 3 coming up in just a little bit, but we are efforting home team Brandon Leak, 680 The Fan, to join us. Of course, the All-Star Weekend set to be in Atlanta. We'll get his thoughts about Trae Young being left off of the All-Star roster and more. So have that coming up. Again, we'll take 3 in just a little bit, and we'll get you the some of the inside scoop on, if you haven't been following this in high school football, the Rush Probst kind of story coming out of Valdosta. So wild. So we will, it may be the greatest line ever read in a deposition ever. We'll get to that coming up a little bit later on the show, but we are efforting home team Brandon Leak, who hopefully join us here in just a little bit, talking some NBA, which again is at the All-Star break, not this weekend, but next weekend.
How much worse did it make Ben those 3 shots last night that Trae Young missed when the Hawks lost to the freaking Cavaliers? How much worse did it make that when Luka Doncic hits 2 3-pointers in 15 seconds to clinch a win over the Celtics?
I mean, it's almost like the NBA saying, "Listen, man, at least we got like an out when he doesn't become an All-Star." And the hometown hero of the Atlanta Hawks now making the All-Star team. And once again, it's just that validated. We had him, like the Hawks drafted Luka. And what do? Nah, man, we're looking for more of a guy we can develop because, Lloyd Pierce is known as a great developer. That's how he got the head coaching job at the Atlanta Hawks. That's what I was told, BJ. I was told that Lloyd Pierce, one, is respected throughout the NBA circles, and I can believe that too. He's a developer. A developer of what? Of character, of the three-point shot, of the perimeter shot. It ain't rebounding. It ain't boxing out. It is not defending. And I like Lloyd Pierce. Lloyd Pierce called my phone during the lecture time. Didn't know he had my number, but he called me. It wasn't recording. But Lloyd, look. You got guys at 6'5", 6'6", I mean, come on. I've seen Coach Carter. This right here, helps against the crossover, BJ. This right here. I'm just saying, we got to do something, BJ, because at the end of the day, I blame Dirk Nowitzki. I blame Dirk. You see it? Hey, man, you got to defend. You learn how to shoot that jump. Bump all that boxing out. Who needs that? Who needs to make a stop at the end of the game?
Anybody want to take a guess who the Atlanta Hawks team leader in player efficiency rating is?
What?
Clint Capella?
John Collins.
Well done, Kevin Thomas.
Nice.
It is Clint Capella. Barely, again, I don't want to use that to frame Trae's season in a poor light. Trae's like a tenth of a point behind Clint, but Clint actually, per the advanced stats, has been the most efficient Atlanta Hawks player.
Well, while we wait for home team, because I'm sure he'll hit us back. So he's a busy guy. I mean,
yes,
especially with all this Atlanta Hawks news. But while we wait for that, I think some important news in BJ's life, Kevin, the Mighty Ducks are back.
Are they?
Disney Plus, the Mighty Ducks, Game Changers. And, I mean, they've got the cast back too, BJ. How excited are you right now?
The cast is back? So hold on. I haven't seen this. So what's kind of the profile of this? What's going on here?
It's a series. It's not a movie. It's a series.
Oh, boy.
So you will have multiple episodes. But, I mean, Kevin, what's wrong with you? Emilio Estevez is back. So, I mean, I'm already sold.
Well, true story. And it's amazing you bring that up because the last 2 nights, 2 nights ago, I think I watched Mighty Ducks 2, and last night I watched Mighty Ducks 3, where they go off to Eden Hall, the preparatory school, and obviously they're in the rivalry with the varsity hockey team.
Another movie with so many flaws, but that's okay.
Well, it's a movie, Kevin. Like it's
I know.
It requires some imagination. It's a movie.
They're the greatest junior hockey team in the world. Can't beat the varsity high school team.
Well, they're also 14 and 15 years old, and the people they're playing are 17 and 18.
Yeah, Kevin.
So what happened to all the 16?
Won't you calm down over there?
I'm just saying.
Just dip. They're like, no, we can't go to school here.
I mean, Kevin, I know you're a developer of young talent. Does your 9 and 10-year-old team walk up to the 13 and 14-year-olds and just wax them?
They could. No, I'm just kidding. No. That is one of those where, like, if you are on that level, like, hey, you are the greatest junior hockey team in the world, you should be able to beat private school, high school hockey. Yes.
Okay, but also you're not appreciating the dynasty that Eden Hall was. When the Mighty Ducks arrived as the junior varsity class, the Eden Hall varsity team had won 10 consecutive state championships. So I think they were probably out clearly like recruiting talent. They had former NHL players on their coaching staff, the resources, the infrastructure, the facilities. This was a machine. This was not just a collection of good high school hockey players. This was an academy. This was a hockey academy.
Christian, basically what BJ is saying is this series gonna come on Netflix? Because if it doesn't, he's not gonna watch it.
No, he's got Disney Plus. He's got Disney Plus.
No. He has it, but he don't watch it. He don't watch it.
What are you talking about? Like 3 nights ago, I watched Wally. Disney Plus is incredible. They got the new, obviously the new Disney, the old classics. You get National Geographic, you get the Star Wars stuff, you get Pixar. I mean, there is a vast array of options with Disney Plus.
Have you watched everything on Disney Plus? Because you've literally watched everything on Netflix. Like you watched everything.
That's because I can't sleep at night, man. I mean, I try to call you at 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't answer, so I have to watch.
Listen, I mean, it's only 2 people up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's the police and my mama, and that's it. So I'm sorry that I'm sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning like regular people. Me, Christian, and Kevin are sleeping. You just wrote, you know what I'm saying? You know why Grayson McCall is not getting the love he should be getting by the national media. It's okay. It's cool. I'm gonna read it.
No, I mean, you want to know the truth, and I'm not. I don't know that I'm comfortable posting it yet because we're so early. But I've already done all conference teams for the ACC and SEC for 2021, and like depth charts and rosters aren't even finalized yet. But
love that.
On that note, we'll step aside. We'll come back. We'll take 3. We'll continue to effort home team Brandon Leak, but we'll take 3 when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can catch us streaming there. You can see our smiling faces there on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, or the top of Ben's hat, as the case may be right now. So we encourage you to join us there. Again, if you miss any portion of the show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, ESPNCoastal.com, and YouTube, all with archive versions of the show as well. We normally do it at 4. We thought we were going to have home team, still efforting home team Brandon Leak, but now let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. Take one, fellas. Who is your current NBA MVP?
I mean, you could basically say LeBron, right? And say that every single year, kind of regardless of what the stats say, because when you talk about most valuable and what that truly means, whatever team he's on is a front runner to win the championship, period. So I'm okay with that. If you want to go LeBron James, if you want a different option, we talked about this during the show meeting. Joel Embiid is averaging 30, 11, and almost a block and a half per game. So 30 points per game, over 11 rebounds, and nearly a block and a half per game. And his efficiency totals are off the charts, and is doing it really without turning the ball over, without compiling a lot of fouls. I mean, I'm looking at some of these advanced statistical metrics, and it's almost unheard of, some of the stuff that he's doing. So LeBron, look, it's probably LeBron every year. But if you're looking for a different direction, I think Joel Embiid definitely deserves consideration.
I mean, BJ, when you're right. I mean, this is called the Not LeBron James Award. I mean, that's what the MVP is. LeBron's like, look, man. I mean, everybody thought that Giannis was better than me last year. How did that go when the playoffs started? Anyway, I think you have to award guys who have had to go through, go through the gauntlet, aka, the process, and stuck with it and still finding a way to elevate their game. Joel Embiid is a big man that can shoot. I'm gonna say it again. He is a big man who can shoot. He can play with his back to the basket. He's averaging a block a game, which means he gives good effort on the defensive end. He is not an elite offender, but he is a very efficient defender, BJ. So, yes, for me, I think it is Joel Embiid, because for their team to go anywhere, Joel Embiid is going to have to be sensational down the stretch of the season, because, like I mentioned, I mean, we at this point of the season, BJ, he's playing well. What we expect to see, breaking news, his foot is hurt. Or he's out for the next, 15 games, 20 games. But so far, right now, the Not LeBron James Award goes to Joel Embiid, the process, a.k.a. Kevin Thomas, favorite player since he came into the league.
All right, moving along. Take 2. Rank your draft quarterbacks 1 through 5. So you're essentially your top 5 quarterbacks as you would put them on your big board heading into the draft.
All right, 1 through 5, not to be confused with 5 through 1. Very, very different distinctions. So I will say Trevor Lawrence, number 1. I think some of the nitpicking is fair, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I'll go Justin Fields 2. I still don't know what has changed in terms of the projections from not that long ago of, oh man, he's the clear number 2 and could be number 1. Well, I know he had a bad game in the Big Ten championship game, but my heavens, I mean, he came back and lit up Clemson. I mean, I think some of that has to kind of counterbalance out. For me, 3, I will go Zach Wilson. I think the proficiency totals are impressive. I think he deserves to be a top half of the first-round pick. I don't think he deserves to be the number 2 overall pick, but I'll go Wilson. 4, probably Mac Jones, and I don't feel great about it, but I'm trusting the numbers kind of beyond the context of what a lot of people have said of, hey, he's got Najee Harris and Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith. Well, yeah, but I don't want to get into the precedent of saying that you can't be a great player if you're surrounded by other great players, because history reflects the fact that great players do play with great players. And then 5 for me, I could go either way with Lance Trask. And I've learned a lot more about Kyle Trask in the last 24 hours writing a story on him, but I think I would still lean Lance. I think his ceiling might be a little bit higher. That does not mean that I don't think Kyle Trask should be a first-round pick. I do. I think this is a generationally good quarterback draft class. But for me, I think right now I would go Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Jones, Lance.
I mean, my clear cut number one is obviously Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's been everything you thought he would be coming out of high school. I mean, keeping that. We look at what Clemson is doing right now. I mean, it's because of him, not just only because of him, but he's a big reason why BJ Heath's box office. He's going to be big time on the next level because I think because of what the scrutiny he's went through. We're talking about the players that's already in the NFL. I mean, he played across from Joe Burrow and got outplayed. Okay, that happens. But when he shared the field with Tua, he outplayed Tua. So and the first time, yes, okay, Justin Fields got some kickback, but the year prior, I mean, the last time I checked it, the only quarterback to rush for 100 yards in the college football playoff game, that would be Trevor Lawrence. So for me, he's my number one. My number two is Justin Fields. We need to stop this nonsense. I don't like how we trying to find every little reason why to say why this guy isn't the truth. Justin Fields is the truth. Justin Fields started out of Georgia, didn't work out. He moved on to Ohio State, and just because he's at Ohio State does not mean he was going to ball. But that is exactly what he did. 2 years ago, Justin Fields had one of the best years we've ever seen. I think like 1-2 picks, and we ain't even we're talking about this guy now. We don't think he's got it above the neck. That's nonsense. I'm getting tired of hearing that stuff. My number three is Mac Jones. I'm gonna tell you why. Mac Jones is the guy at Alabama, not named Tua, who didn't win the Heisman because of the guy he was throwing to, went undefeated, and he's the reason why that offense stayed afloat. The whole thing about it is people don't try to devalue him now because he went out there and did what he's supposed to do. As good as Devontae Smith is, as good as Najee Harris is, as good as Jalen Waddle is, they are not Mac Jones. He was the one that kept that offense going, and the fact that he had a school to where it got unrealistic expectations, either to win or nothing, he got it done. My number four, I don't care if people do not like this. I think it is Kyle Trask.
And there it is.
But hold on for a second. This is the thing. I'm not going to let people talk me into somebody that I have not heard about the whole year. I'm going to get to my number five, but this is the thing about Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask was the number three. He was the number three guy at his school. Jumped over the guy that got recruited in Emory Jones and ended up being a Heisman Trophy finalist without a running game. All the other guys we're talking about had a running game. He did this without a running game. The reason why Felipe Franks at Arkansas is because of Kyle Trask. The reason why Emory Jones finally get the start is because of Kyle Trask. It's got to mean something to come from a nobody to a somebody at Florida and be a Heisman Trophy finalist. If that don't mean nothing, what is any other quarterback going to do? Why isn't we celebrate Kyler Murray and we celebrate Baker Mayfield and and these other guys, and then when it comes to Kyler, it's that Dan Mullen offense. Dan Mullen coached two Heisman Trophy candidates, one as an offensive coordinator and one as a head coach. All I'm saying is they got to mean something. And my number five, I think it is Zach Wilson. This is why, though. This is why. I'm staying away from Trey Lance. It scares me when a quarterback don't throw no pick. I'm not saying you should, but that kind of stuff scares me. This is the thing about Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is benefiting from the hype train. It happens every single year. There's going to be a quarterback that all his flaws are not really flaws. No. He just had a bad game against Coach Carolina. It's less about what he didn't do and not more about what they did do. So for me, Zach Wilson is my number five. I think he's going to be good, but this better than Justin Fields, better than Mac Jones, better than Kyle Trask. Man, get out of here with that. I'm just not seeing it.
All right, moving along. Take three. We'll get to the Rush Pope story coming up in just a little bit, which obviously, if you read it, it's Deep South high school football just going crazy. And Christian admitted, he's like, hey, he loves the old high school football forums where guys go, that's his guilty pleasure. What is your guilty pleasure?
Pop-Tarts. What? I mean, look, I have type 1 diabetes, man. Like I'm not supposed to be eating a lot of Pop-Tarts, but I can't help it. I love Pop-Tarts, man. And I especially love Pop-Tarts late at night. And I know a lot of people like the s'more Pop-Tarts. I like the brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts. To those are overwhelming.
BJ,
I mean,
you're doing the same thing that Cam did. Cam said, my guilty pleasure is candy. No, guilty pleasure is something that
you're ashamed to admit.
You do in the darkness of your house when nobody's around.
I have type 1 diabetes. I have type 1 diabetes, and I actually have a Pop-Tart box right here. Hold on a second. So I can tell it.
Ashamed of it. Like I need something that you're ashamed of.
67 carbs. I should be ashamed of that.
BJ, all right. Never mind.
I mean, hold on. You don't think it's shameful for a type 1 diabetic to be eating brown sugar Pop-Tarts?
No, probably not good for you, but I don't think it's shameful.
I mean,
You just admitted it on radio. So, I mean,
Okay, all right. See, this is okay. When I saw this question, I said, "All right, I got three guilty pleasures." I mean, and it's well, the first one is I love watching First Amendment audits on YouTube. Like I learned a lot about the law just watching guys with cameras irritate people. Like, this is my First Amendment right. What you gonna do? You can't make a constitution protected activity a legal activity. Suspicious is not a crime. Is that a misdemeanor or a felony? I love watching it because they are trying to get in trouble and they don't get in trouble. My number two. I love diners, drive-ins, and dives. Like I'll be like, it's on the Flavor Town. I could just
That's
sit there
a
and
guilty
watch it.
pleasure.
I could just sit there and watch it. In my mind, I'm like this.
hold on a second, because I need to better understand this. That's a guilty pleasure. Isn't that like one of the most popular? Isn't that like one of the most popular shows on television?
No, here it is.
You don't want people to know you
Yeah,
watch.
it's like this. If you
Why?
walk in my house and I'm watching Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, they're like, "Hey man, why you always watching this?" No, my kids, they that's the channel. Then
That show's lit.
and then my number three is this. Okay, there is this show on Netflix called Chef's Table, right?
That is not a guilty pleasure. That's an amazing.
Hold on, Christian. This is the thing. There was a guy on there. He literally just uses fire to make his food, like just fire. And I'll just sit there and go. I'm sitting there going, Lord, I like it. That's how I'm supposed to cook. I burn everything anyway. I finally found a technique that I can still eat it. I kept telling people that's not burnt. That's Cajun, son. That's not burnt. So for me, I love. Listen, First Amendment audits, if you've never seen it, you're doing yourself a disservice. Diners, drive-ins, and dives, I am telling you, Guy Fieri with that little Super Saiyan hair, you know what I'm saying, Flavor Town, I mean, I love that stuff. And like I mean, Chef's Table, because underneath it all, I can't cook, but in my mind, I can cook. I'm just telling you, in my mind, I'm one of the best chefs in the world. I
feel you.
I just don't cook.
Kevin, what's your guilty pleasure?
I watch a lot of cooking shows as well, and I hate to cook. I don't even want to cook, but I like watching other people do it.
You just
So
sit
it's
there
like,
and watch it.
yeah, it's like, oh man, that looks good.
I
I don't want to have to cook it, but I'll eat it.
your kids walk in, you're like changing the channel, like,
Yeah, man, that was a good show. I think it was called The Fire Door. Was the name of that place?
Yes, and
Yeah.
Kevin, here's another one. When I lived in Jersey, they used to, you have to have, you park certain places, you got the parking meters. They used to have a show called Parking Wars. It is the best. People going to the impound. You got.
we
your
have a
registration.
limited amount of time on this
Yeah.
earth, and
No,
you
I've-
spend it watching Parking
No,
Wars.
that's my.
Yeah,
That's,
no, Christian,
I'm kind of in a similar
don't
vein.
start
No,
watching
no,
it.
Parking Wars is good.
Yeah, except I watched Storage Wars. That was
BJ, so yours is Pop-Tarts.
That being said-
Steven, what I don't understand is all the shows you guys are naming are like immensely popular.
yeah, but nobody admits they watch them. They're very popular, yet nobody watches them, supposedly.
It's true.
Yeah, like if somebody was like, "What's your favorite store to go to?" You was like Pottery Barn.
Yeah,
You wouldn't tell nobody.
exactly. I love pottery.
Well, it's like, the
Uh,
NFL. It's like the NFL. Everyone's like, look, I'm sick
Hold
of
on a
this
second.
politics in NFL. I ain't watching it. It's like somebody is.
Yeah, somebody continues to keep watching it. But no, we'll come back. Home team, Brandon Leak. He has. We've made contact. He'll join us when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us. Streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com as well, and live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can catch us there on line for the show as NBA coming down the stretch of the first half. All-Star Weekend next week in Atlanta. Though no fans will be there. And joining us here to talk about that and more from 680 The Fan in Atlanta. Good friend of the show, Home Team. Brandon Leak joins us. Home Team, welcome. How are you?
Gentlemen, doing all right. How you guys doing today?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. Let's start with the today's most egregious offense that we've seen on the social media. Trae Young, not an all-star. Should he be?
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot to unpack with Trae not making it to the All-Star game. Look, he certainly was worthy, and when you say worthy, you look at what he had demonstrated statistically, where he's been consistent, his scoring, his assist numbers. But I think you look at what happened, and I think it's more of a referendum on his perception around the league. And I say that to say because he didn't make it as a reserve as voted on by the coaches. But when you throw in all of the ways to get to the All-Star game, nobody selected him. He wasn't selected by the coaches to be a reserve. And the other All-Stars are selected by the media, the players, and the fans. So in essence, the media, the players, the fans, nor the coaches selected him to be an All-Star. And I think it's unfortunate because he's actually, before the voting closed, was doing better statistically this year than he was last year when he got a chance to start in the All-Star game.
How much of the perception, I guess, of Trae maybe not being on that top tier around the league is a result of the Hawks just being bad?
I think that has something to do with it, but then again, Bradley Beal is a starting guard in the All-Star game. So you can be on a bad team and still be an All-Star. I think, the truth is Trae is just going to have to look at this moment and recognize that how Hawks fans feel about him and how people who enjoy him as a fan of his game coming out of college, he's going to have to understand that, outside of that circle, people are not viewing him the same way. His voting numbers went down. The fan vote went down. The player vote went down. And now he's not a member of the All-Star unit. So those are all things that, millions of people around the world had the opportunity to jump in on. His NBA brethren, as I said, had to jump in on, and members of the media, and he still did not get a chance to get into the game. So I think maybe some refining of his game down the road, and certainly had the Hawks been a winning team, if they were 18-13 instead of the reverse, I'm sure that would have happened or been a little bit more suited to be in his favor. But the bottom line is there were plenty of opportunities for him to get in, and people are just not recognizing or don't feel that it's the same Trae Young that he was a few years ago, again, when he was an all-star starter.
And Brandon, I know BJ was talking about the fact that the Hawks are not good right now. You look at the position that he plays. It's not like you ain't got a lot of guys at this position that aren't on that putting up some big buckets. How much you say refining, his game? Does that mean that, dare I say, he's gonna have to be a two-way player?
Well, I don't think he didn't make it because of his defense. And let's just keep it all the way real. People don't get to the All-Star game because they're, fans and coaches are, sitting in smoke-filled rooms seeing who's the better defender. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and a lot of scoring power is going to the All-Star game. These guys aren't great defenders. I think when I talk about refining his game, if you read between the lines and look at what people have been saying and doing, some of the 40-foot jumpers, the volume of shots that he's taking. Even in the game last night, he scored 28 points, but he shot it 27 times to get 28. If you take out the shots that aren't counted when he goes to the free throw line, he's shooting over 30 times to get to 28 points. I think that's something that coaches recognize. And I think also, if you go back to what his idol even said, Steve Nash, head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, who is a point guard and MVP, doesn't like the jumping back into players to try to draw fouls, the nutmegging that he's been called out for. Trevor Ariza pulled him to the side. I've seen Tom Thibodeau have a nutty when one of his players was called for a foul, and he was explaining that that's not real basketball. He's jumping into players. I think refining of his game not necessarily means becoming an all-star defender, but maybe not doing some of the things that clearly are irritating his comrades as NBA players, as an NBA player, and the coaches who just had the final decision on whether or not to vote him in as an all-star.
Home Team Brandon Leak joining us here on a 3-9 Home Team on your show. Home Team Hamilton, you had a great stat about Trae Young. He was one of the first players to average nearly a double-double and not get selected, right?
First player in 30 years to score, and this is before the All-Star voting had closed, but the first player in 30 years to average more than 25 points and 9 assists and not make an All-Star game. So this isn't just, he just missed out. This is something unique that typically a player who's handing out dimes and getting buckets at the rate that Trae Young is typically automatically is an all-star. And I think that's where it comes down to. Bottom line, they just don't like him as much. And they are players and the coaches particularly, because he was certainly good enough to be voted in at the very least as a reserve, but they just don't like the style of play that and the way he's doing it, which is unfortunate because that's what made him an all-star the first time, which made the Hawks a little bit more exciting to watch, and which has helped the Hawks become a little bit more interesting. So it's kind of become a gift and a curse for Trae Young, and I think he's just going to have to find a way to alter his game. And I think more importantly, if the Hawks start winning, this isn't even a conversation. He clearly would be in.
I want to ask you a little bit more about Trae Young's defense, because I think you are right. Very few people sit around and watch NBA regular season games taking notes on kind of defensive efficiency metrics, but I'm on NBA.com and it looks like Trae has improved some in terms of the defensive efficiency rating. Is he still, in your mind, one of the worst backcourt defenders in the NBA, or has some modest progress been made?
Well, he has improved, and I think that's an important thing that you pointed out. He has improved, but I think being completely transparent, he was the worst. There was a time a couple of years ago where out of all of the players for about a week, he was the worst defensive player rated by the defensive rating in the NBA. He's gone from the worst to not as bad as he was to, not a great defender. And I think that does show some improvement, but I think ultimately that's something that he's going to have to work on. But it goes back to another component of what I was saying, which is the perception, how he's perceived. It is perceived that Trae Young plays no defense. It is perceived all he wants to do is take 3 or 4 36 or 40 footers and just get his 25 or 28 points while he's handing out 8 assists to no avail in the win-loss column. So I think those perceptions are not necessarily the truth about how he is evolving as a player. The other thing is he's still a young player. There's still plenty of time for him to be better. My goodness, Steph Curry wasn't a great defender when he came into the league, and he certainly learned how to move his feet a little bit and just stay in front of guys to make himself a better defender. So I think there's time, but I think it's more about the perception. Now, let's also not get it twisted. He's not a great defender either. And coaches are recognizing that if he's on the floor, they're going to find a screen and a pick and roll to free up somebody on the weak side of the ball. So there's some things he has to work through, but he is not as terrible as a defender as he was when he came into the league. And that's just going to come down, again, to the refinement and how he changes the perception of who he is, what he wants to be. Get on the floor. And if it's not, stopping guys, maybe upping his steal game where he becomes one of those guards that has pesky and active hands that forces a lot of turnovers, and maybe that will give him the recognition that he's looking for.
So Brandon, what you're describing is, Trae Young, he's going to birth a whole new athlete. When you talk about the fact that he's jumping into players, he's definitely seen James Harden do that. When you talk about shooting a lot just to get, just to be, 28 points a game, that sounds like something James Harden's doing. When you look at some of the big names around the NBA, what they get praised for, a guy like Trae Young won't, because obviously he's not a big enough name yet to be a big enough face to run the NBA. But it's like Trae Young gonna say, well, look, man, I don't even really, everybody pattern their game after somebody. But I just think that when you look at the things that other guys get praised for, a guy like Trae Young won't, because he can score, but they don't think he should be doing what everybody in the league is doing right now.
And I think what you said is fair, and I think that that's valid. But the other side of that is everybody doesn't like James Harden's game. Everybody is, not all in on James Harden. Now, albeit he's an all-star, but he's also having career highs in scoring. He's also having career highs in assists. He's also having a career high in three-pointers made. I mean, he's averaging almost 12 assists a game and shooting 41% from behind the three-point line. And some of the criticism he was getting was how many times is he shooting while his teammates were standing around in Houston. He was racking up 34, 35, 36 points a game while he's just dribbly, bibbly bopping around out on the three-point line and then knocking down threes, but it wasn't translating into wins. So I think there's something to what you're saying that maybe Trae Young unfairly is being admonished by the coaches, but they've spoken. So the question is, are you going to use it as motivation? Are you going to use it to change some aspect of your game? Or is he going to pout? And I think the pouting, the last option, is not something that he wants to do, because I think some of the unheard conversations amongst coaches that I've been privy to is a lot of coaches around the NBA aren't sure if he's wired right in order to take criticism, to be the leader, and to deal with the franchise that needs somebody who can take that stuff while they lose a lot of games and try to rebuild the organization until they become a winner.
All right, home team, before we let you go, we're about to dive in to this Rush Probst story out of Valdosta. And I admitted that one of my guilty pleasures, something I really wouldn't want people to see on my computer, is I love the high school forums. I love diving in and reading all the rumors out there from like Big Cat 4796 about who the next head coach is going to be. I'm curious, what's home team Brandon Leake's guilty pleasure that he wouldn't want folks knowing about?
You know what? I have to admit that I'm a stat nerd. So if you threw one stat at me, I'm going to be on about 15 different websites trying to peel back a layer of that. So if you give me a defensive efficiency rating on a player, I'm going to go into his usage percentage. I'm going to go into, how many, what percentage of his shots are three-pointers as compared to two. So I'm kind of a stat nerd. I hope, to that point, to a larger point, I hope everything works out and they find out there's not any or a lot of skullduggery down there in Valdosta.
I would not bet on that.
I think that's one of those cautionary tales of what happens when somebody could be bestowed too much power in one place when a lot of people want to see a lot of W's when it comes to a football team. But yeah, my guilty pleasure, I just love to stay on websites and search for the stats because I'm a stat nerd, even though stats don't tell the whole story. They just fill in the gap.
That's a lot better for you than what I do. So
home team Brandon Leake, our guest here on 3 and Out. Home team, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Time, guys.
Appreciate it. Home team Brandon Leake joining us here talking some Hawks basketball as they are heading down the stretch. All-Star break coming up end of next week, but the Hawks, I think, still have 5 games in the next 8 or 9 days that they're going to play here heading into the All-Star break. We'll come back. We got more to come. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Again, we talked about Tiger Woods, top of the show, and just the extensive injuries. I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Bo Sasser, orthopedic surgeon with Summit Sports Medicine, orthopedic surgery, talking about the Tiger Woods injuries and just what they are and what the road looks like on the way back for Tiger Woods. You talk about Tiger Woods, obviously the face of golf and a horrific car accident, and you hear about the details of a rod going into the leg, foot and ankle being stabilized. We'll get into some of the other things that happened there, but when you hear those things, how bad are we talking about here?
I mean, the fact that he had to get taken out of his car using the jaws of life, which takes a lengthy amount of time. These are some significant injuries. We can think of something like Alex Smith's open fracture and the amount of time that it took him to recover, but this is even above and beyond that.
And you talk about rods being inserted and screws and pins into the ankle and the foot, and then combined with, according to the medical center release, trauma to the muscle and soft tissue of the leg required surgical release of the covering of the muscles to relieve pressure due to swelling. I mean, how complicated is this going to be to recover from?
Right. And you have to take it in sort of a stepwise fashion. It sounds like they stabilized what fractures could be stabilized. If they were open fractures, meaning that the bone was exposed due to the severity and the high energy, the fact that this was a high energy type injury, that increases the length of time for healing. When you have those high energy injuries, you get a lot of stripping of the bone of its needed vascular supply, and so you can make the X-rays look good, and then you have to sort of hope a little bit that the fractures are going to heal. Now, on top of that, and what's important, and people kind of gloss over if you don't know much about it, but it sounds like he had what's called a compartment syndrome, and that's when, due to the crush injury, your leg, your arm has basically been pinned, and it's not getting any type of blood supply, sort of like a tourniquet for an extensive length of time. And when you let go of that pressure, you send all the pressure, the blood goes down to the arm or the leg in this manner, goes down to the leg and causes significant swelling. And so you have to release those compartments, those muscle compartments, and release that pressure so the muscle itself doesn't basically die. And this in itself, that one issue, compartment syndrome, can take a significant time to recover from and have some long-term consequences.
And I know you hear that when you start thinking rehab from all those things you just laid out, which all sound obviously horrific and intense. Are we even contemplating golf at this point, or are we talking about just walking without issues in the foreseeable future for Tiger Woods?
Right. And he's young, he's healthy, so he's got all that going for him. But having a high energy injury, the first thing you want to do, as I always tell athletes with any type of injury, you want to walk before you can run before you can practice before you can play. And he has a lengthy recovery just before that physician probably is going to allow him to start putting weight on it. So I would start with the walking and work from there.
Obviously, without being there and seeing it for yourself, I mean, best case scenario, are you talking about a year before you could even begin to think about other activities?
I do. I mean, we've all of the orthopedic surgeons, we've all usually do our residency in a level 1 trauma center. So we have seen these horrific injuries. We see them some here, but we've all experienced them, and there's something that you don't forget. And we see these patients in the clinic and they can easily take 9 months to a year to get back before you're even considering any other activities.
So there's a quick synopsis of a conversation I was able to have there about just in general what Tiger Woods is dealing with there on the road to recovery. Either way, going to be quite some time before I think we hear him attempting to even come back and play golf. Christian, I know he's coming back, right? But it's going to be a while, so calm down. Let him rehab and come back. We'll come back. We'll come back. Final hour, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here on the show. Sorry, I waited till the last minute to try to get it out there before we came back in the show. Sorry. I'm getting the peanut gallery fully involved here in the studio today, fellas. So it is what it is. They're all quiet on the other side. They have no idea what's going on here on 3 and Out. Again, final hour of the show. Talk some college football coming up here in just a little bit. But first, just unbelievable. The Rush Probst Valdosta situation, very believable. But according to depositions in regards to Alan Rodemaker versus Valdosta City Schools, Rush Probst's name comes up quite a bit in terms of how he potentially got hired and all of that. Of course, Rodemaker suing for wrongful termination after he was fired, and then Rush Probst get the job, and then you read in a lot of the stuff about how he got the job, and it was like basically he found out who the candidates were. This is according to the deposition testimony. He called up all the other candidates, basically said, "You don't want to take that job," and told the school board that you don't want to take those guys. You want me, and got in there. Of course, then allegations of taking money that was not meant to be put in Rush Probst's pocket. It was meant to go.
Oh, please tell the story of what money got put into his pocket.
To the football program. So somebody was saying, hey, there's fake companies that pop up around football time and go to business. Say, hey, you want to support the football program? Send us that check. They have nothing to do with the football program. They just take the money and your host. This one apparently had to do with Winn-Dixie, where they made a check out to support the football program, have signage in the stadium to Rush Probst. He just put it in his pocket. Never got stadium signage. Never got any of that. And I'm trying to find the exact wordage of it. It's to the tune of like $700.
It was a fake company, right?
Yeah.
That said, hey, give us $700, we'll give you a sign. And then the Winn-Dixie manager was like, okay, who do I make this check out to? Somebody found out Rush Probst's contact info. Rush was just like, hey, man, just you make that check out to me. We'll take care of it. And then either, according to the deposition, him or his wife deposited that money into the account. But I think the quote you're looking for, Kevin, is, hey, we have a problem at the Winn-Dixie.
Yeah, when this all comes ahead, it's in the deposition. I'm trying to find the exact quote. He's like, basically, we're talking to the head of the touchdown club and all this back and forth. It's like, hey, we got a problem down at Winn-Dixie. I don't know why it struck me as funny, but
it is funny. This whole thing is, when you get down to it, is just the humor inside of it is truly amazing. Now, there's stuff where the lack of actual competition, because you're recruiting and paying players to come when then you're going to facing off some of our local schools in the playoffs. But I mean, again, any sentence or any story that starts with "we have a problem at the Winn-Dixie" is just phenomenal.
Down at Winn-Dixie, and a problem down at Winn-Dixie.
Well, and I mean, isn't there, I guess, allegations of a demand for or a need, I guess, for funny money? What does that even mean?
Just a little walking around money you might be able to distribute
BJ, let me
to
walk
other
you through
places.
This. Funny money is, I'm the head coach at this high school, and if I just so happen to have the father of a really good football player who's not necessarily in my district, and those are very
and
loose
again,
terms,
this is what is alleged
in a deposition.
In the deposition,
with
yes,
the
that was
touchdown club director for Valdosta. Is, look, he just so happens to come into my office, BJ. I need between $10,000 and $15,000 in my desk at all times if I need to talk to that dad and say, hey, here's your rent for that new house that you're going to have inside my school district. That's funny money, man. You don't know when you're going to need it, but you're going to need it.
I mean, Ben, you obviously had a different high school experience than me. You and Christian both played college football. You played college football at an extremely high level. But, man, when I played high school football, I just, went out there and tried for a couple of hours and then went home. It wasn't I mean, now granted, I wasn't good, but this is crazy.
The thing that when you reading about this coach, man, you saying to yourself, now what am I reading here? Am I reading about a coach that had funny money, or am I reading about a dude that had a wife and a lady? It's a lot to this dude. If I get interviewed by Nick Saban and the interview goes well, and on the way home, Nick Saban calls me and goes, "What's up, coach?" He goes, do you have a wife and a girlfriend? Huh? Do you have a wife and a girlfriend? He goes, yes. I mean, and the only reason why he's telling him the truth is because it's Nick Saban. It's like, I'm telling you, I am not trying to sit here and make it seem as if Coach Rush is the worst coach out there. But I will say this. He did not invent funny money. He did not invent all this stuff he's doing. When people ask, why is high school football so crazy? From stuff like this, because I'm telling you, BJ, you read it saying this is crazy. No, this is now. I'm not talking about the two. I'm not talking about the girlfriend and wife thing. Now I'm not. Let me make sure I put that out there. But what he's doing, think about this. You had to win Dixie, hey man, who should you make it out to? Just make it out to me. It's fine. What?
But no, I mean, Ben's right. So it's just like go back over the history, right? I mean, this is all out there. No, this is speculation. This is all confirmed. When he was the head coach at Hoover High School in Alabama, he had 2 families.
Right.
He had a wife and 3 children, and he had a girlfriend who he got pregnant, which you're the head football coach at a high school. How are you making time for that? Number one. So he got fired from his job at Hoover after that blew up, went to Colquitt, got suspended for headbutting a player during a game so hard that it made Probst himself bleed, and then wound up getting fired. And his teaching certificate suspended. It eventually got reinstated, and that's how he became eligible to be hired at Valdosta. But inside of all that was circulating rumors of misconduct with money inside the program. And now you have the director of the Touchdown Club, which BJ and I were talking about this. This isn't taxpayer money. The Touchdown Club is responsible for going out and getting fundraising money, but you still have to pay taxes
to support the program and all
like that. And again, you're asking for them to give you $10,000 to $15,000 to keep in a desk at all times.
Yeah.
To say
just in case
a really good quarterback happens to roll through and you got to take care of him.
I mean, correct me. Doesn't this seem like a Lifetime movie that comes on at like 11:30 at night?
No, this is the thing. Okay, the thing about it is, BJ, we get caught up in the day in day out of what we do on the show and things of this nature. There is a Coach Rush, right? No. There is a dude saying there's a dude out there. I'm telling you, he's telling his wife, I'm telling you, baby, we can do this. Like, what you mean? Coach Rush is making sure that high school coaches are taken care of. Like, he didn't want $10,000 to $15,000 of hush money. He needed that at all times. Like, if the wrong quarterback coming in, y'all got to restock me. Why? Because I just gave it all out. And think about this, BJ. As long as Coach Rush continues to coach, why would he stop? Like, why would I stop doing what I'm doing?
Christian, I know you've been reading up on everything. I mean, is the anticipation, I guess, given the track record, that if Valdosta decides to make a change, that Probst will get hired somewhere else?
Probably, but there's 3 different allegations really going on, or maybe 4.
Yeah.
Number 1 is from Alan Rodemaker that he was wrongfully terminated, and there's a lot of race issues inside of that, inside the Valdosta community, inside the school board that are being addressed inside this lawsuit. In this deposition is really where they're going to the character of the guy the school board fired Alan Rodemaker to hire is why they're going after him. And Alan Rodemaker, from all indications, he was an excellent coach.
Yeah.
Anybody you talk to, and from the records you saw on the field, was an excellent football coach. But so you have that. You have the allegations of needing money and then the misappropriations of funds. You have the allegations of recruiting violations, i.e., hey, quarterback Jay Garcia from California, who's a USC commit. I know you can't play in California this year. We'll take care of you. We'll pay for your dad to live down here. We'll give you $25,000 a month for rent. Come here, play quarterback for us. And another quarterback from Atlanta that they were paying rent to, again, in the allegations from the dissertation, right? You have those. And then you have allegations that he's talking to as many as 15 players right now from across the country. And Kevin, you haven't even got to the best part yet. Being deposed, this man says that he believes that knows that colleges are involved in this recruiting, but then gets so nervous that it sounds like he's about to out one of his favorite schools that he says, actually, you know what? I don't want to talk about that. Another lawyer goes, no, I want you to answer that. Keep going. And he goes, I'm not going to. Lock me up. Like, he is willing to go to jail to protect his favorite college football team. It's truly, I mean, BJ, you're right. It's if they made a Lifetime movie on ESPN, if ESPN got into Lifetime movies, this is the first movie they're making.
I mean, this is insane. I mean, this is absolutely crazy.
No. But think about this. With everything he's done, you got 2 families, right? Funny money, There's a problem in Winn-Dixie. paying $25,000 a month. Throw that to the side. I am willing to go to. I'm not willing to go to jail for what I've been doing, but I am willing to go to jail to not tell on my school. Like, think about that.
Well, that wasn't Rush Probst. This was
that's the touchdown.
that's
club
the touchdown club guy.
He's willing to throw.
Listen,
I mean, he's willing to throw everybody else under the bus, but when he got dangerously close to outing his favorite college football team, he was willing to go to jail.
But BJ, all I'm saying is, BJ, this is the thing. We consider high school football, yeah, man, we love it. But that's we only at the first layer. I'm telling you, people start saying, man, why do you want to be a head coach so much? You see stuff like this? I mean, I'm telling you, if I'm a head coach, right, half of them gonna say, man, I will stay far away from the other half saying, he get $15,000 in hush money. What? Free money?
I want to go back to like the early 2000s, Kevin, because I'm a single guy. I have no kids. This is pretty much what I do. I'll go to the gym sometimes after work. It's pretty much what I do. I have like maybe 15% of the responsibility of a high school football coach. How do you find the time in being a major state championship winning high school football coach to go out and have 2 families?
If I knew the answer to that question, Christian,
No.
I don't.
If you read the story of how it all happened or whatever, I mean, because I know we think Coach Russ ain't as smooth as he think. He obviously the other lady and all these, it's crazy. And I am not.
He was nobody at his mistress in the stands after wins. Like he would turn around and point up at her like, "Hey, love you, babe." And it's just like this is unbelievable.
I mean, and the fact of the matter is, when the mistress, when she got married, while he's married, he goes, I was kind of disappointed when I heard she's got married. You're married. Like, what are you? You're married. Yeah, man, but she didn't have to do me like that. Do you like what? She didn't even come to the wedding. Why would she? I'm just telling you, this stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
But Ben, when you get back to the local side of it, can you imagine being a high school football coach? We know a lot of high school football coaches that do it the right way.
Absolutely.
A bunch of them around here.
Yes.
Play in the 6A division where they would have to play against Valdosta and have played against Valdosta in the past. Can you imagine being a high school football coach where you do it the right way? You're sacrificing time for other people's kids every single day, day in, day out, and then you read that dissertation about what's happening and him recruiting players, bringing money in. I mean, I know a lot of coaches around here that struggle to get $10,000, $15,000 just in their touchdown club to support the program. You're asking to have that in your desk at all times. Like, can you imagine coaching those kids and then having to play that? How mad you would be?
No, because I was blessed enough to be a professional athlete, and they think I know about all professional athletes. I could walk up in the building and be like, hey, Ben, man, what's up with that TO dude? I don't know. I just got off the phone. I don't know. Like, I do not know. I was one of those guys who prided myself on doing things the right way. But unfortunately, as I told BJ, perception and reality of my life, 24 hours a day, I cannot walk away from it, because if they do something good, we do something good. When they do something blatantly ignorant, it puts it on all us too. So good coaches and bad coaches, because we don't know them all, throw them all in the same pot. And that's the unfortunate part about being a part of this business.
It really is a crazy story. If you get into to read all the depositions of what's going on there, and I mean Valdosta. I mean Valdosta is crazy about football. I will say that.
Kevin,
I haven't been there for.
Sir, I'd like you to go back to that part where you were about to incriminate a college coach.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Lock me up.
What are you talking about?
Lock me up.
Go to jail.
Lock me up.
Send me up. And we got a problem down at the Winn-Dixie. We're gonna need you to handle that.
As
well. We'll come back. We'll come back. We'll talk college football when we return to 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, and Ben Troop. Glad you are with us. No funny money walking around here on a Wednesday afternoon. But hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. We are live streaming Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well as we talk some college football. Obviously, you can make the not-so-bold prediction, BJ and Ben, as you look ahead to especially SEC play. Georgia and Alabama feel like they'll meet in Atlanta. Two very good teams. Maybe Florida has something to say about that, but bold prediction, Georgia and Alabama play in Atlanta for the SEC championship. Which teams do you think could derail that from happening?
Yeah, I think the first team that comes to mind is Florida, and you mean that directly, obviously with Georgia, perhaps indirectly with Alabama, although that would be a serious surprise at this point. But if you go back and look at Florida's recruiting rankings, right, over the last 15 years. I mean, Ben, do you think it's fair to say that based on recruiting rankings, and I know that's not everything, but when you talk about the addition of Eric Gilbert, you talk about the addition of Justin Shorter, you talk about the addition of DeMarcus Bowman, you talk about the addition of Lorenzo Lingard, this may be the most talented roster that Florida has had since the Urban Meyer days in terms of just the 4- and 5-star talent. And I love the fact that I just asked you a question and I'm not letting you answer. But
yeah, I'm about to say, my goodness.
But Ben, this is what I'm getting at. I think people are writing Florida off here in late February because they don't bring back the traditional star power. But I think quietly there is a lot to like with this roster.
Yeah, and BJ, and I know we're gonna get to it. The way people treat Florida is how people are treating Kyle Trask during the draft process, right? It's like, oh, well, I mean, he's not – because what happens is, right, Florida's not going to be in the top 10 in recruiting. Florida specializes in the transfer portal, right? So what happens is when you start talking about the recruiting rankings, you're trying to count how many 5-stars going to Georgia. But I'm going to say what I said in the previous show. Florida did not have a better team than Georgia last year. In 2020, Georgia was the better team. Florida won the game. I don't want to hear about who didn't play and things of that nature. But what I will say is this. Georgia has to dealing with the hype every single week. Florida has to deal with not being quite up to par with those guys in Athens every single week. I think what has happened, BJ, when you look at Florida is going to be just as talented as any team they're on the field with. They're going to be able to meet the talent threshold. When you talk about what Georgia has to deal with the fact that up until recent, they was owning Florida mentally, right? And that mental thing does happen. I'm going to say this. Kirby Smart is a better recruiter. Dan Mullen is a better developer of talent. You will see that manifest itself, not even talking about the draft. I'm just talking about what the type of things going on. So I agree. Auburn is always that nemesis for Georgia, BJ, because that game gets really, really crazy when you talk about the things, balls bouncing off of people's helmets and all these different things, former DBs playing at Georgia, beating. But I think that when you look at Florida, Florida is primed for a team like Georgia because that is the barometer. If I know this is the barometer right here, this is what we got to deal with. Everybody, isn't it funny? Stetson was the man to play Florida, see? Then here come Daniels. Now if he would have played and somebody said, do Daniels play defense? Because you would have had the same defense. All I'm saying is, but the thing is too, Florida has to make sure that by the time they get to Georgia, they're not, because Florida has Alabama third game of the season. So we'll talk about that.
They really could derail it both ends. But the thing is, I don't like this because we did this, BJ and Kevin. Y'all gonna love this. Alabama wins the national championship. Who played them the best? Did you see them with? They lost. I don't want to hear that now, and I'm not doing that. But I will say Florida has a chance to derail both Alabama and Georgia. But I'm gonna put more on that being on Georgia, not Alabama, even though Alabama do come to Florida. But yeah, BJ, I do think the Florida team, Dan Mullen won't say it out loud, but he knows if you can't beat the team in Georgia, it doesn't matter what type of season you have.
Listen, of course there are questions we have to have answered with Florida. I think in my last preseason top 25 poll pre-spring, I had Georgia about 10 spots ahead of Florida. But I think this emerging narrative that Georgia is this overwhelming kind of unchallengeable, unquestioned favorite in the SEC East, and Florida is light years behind, to me is just not a reflection of reality. I think Georgia has a great team coming back. I'm excited for the Dogs. I think they deserve to be one of the national favorites. But Florida's losing Kyle Trask, yes. Florida's losing Kyle Pitts, yes. But look at what Florida is bringing back defensively. Look at what Florida has brought in via the transfer portal. I think the Gators, think about this. Florida was awful at running the football last year. If they can even be average at running the football this season, that makes everything better. That makes your O-line better at pass protection. That makes your defense better. The ripple effect of that is, I think, almost unfathomable in some regards. I think it wouldn't stun me if Florida emerges as a national contender. Now, there are questions. Emory Jones, there's a difference in being the guy that's going to be the guy and being the guy, okay? All these five-star running backs, we got to see him do it. You got to replace playmakers. Obviously, you have to wait for the clearance for Gilbert and Bowman and all those guys. But to me, the team that people need to be aware of is Florida. Now, the other team I'll mention too, guys, is I think we have really kind of forgotten about LSU, and I don't think that's right. I know a lot of people say that the end of a previous season can be the starting point for the beginning of a next season. LSU ended the year with a win at Florida and a win over a red-hot Ole Miss team where they got 5 picks. And I'll say this about LSU too, because when you try to project who's going to bounce back or have a kind of a step forward season, you look at statistical outliers like Florida being terrible at rushing. LSU was last in the nation in pass defense last year. LSU was last in the nation in pass defense last year. And they still were able to beat Ole Miss, still were able to beat Florida, still was able to beat South Carolina, still was able to beat Arkansas. If they're even average in pass defense with a Max Johnson or a Miles Brennan at quarterback, watch out. I'm telling you, keep writing off LSU. I think they're going to be in the mix.
Yeah, LSU is not going to lack talent. I think what happens is, too, we talking about the two teams, obviously, in the West and the East that obviously run the West and the East. Even if LSU has, 2 years removed now of winning the national championship, going undefeated, I think, BJ, when we talk about the narratives of certain teams, it hasn't really been that different for a long time, right? Like, when you talk about Florida is always at their best when they're not being talked about. When they coming in top 6 or 7 in the preseason, I don't like it. You want them to be outside of, you want them to be 21, 22, feeling disrespected, and they got to work their way up. When you talk about Georgia, when has Georgia not got all the ink in the paper? It was like this in the Mark Richt era. It's like this now, in the Kirby Smart era. The thing about Alabama, they are the premier team in college football. So we'll see what Florida has to say about it. I do think Dan Mullen thrives in these positions because I think what happens is, he got that little, that little crazy looking smile he got, whatever he doing. He's Kevin's uncle. He white as all get out. But I'm just saying, I love him. I'm what? But I'm just saying that at the end of the day, Florida's going to have to go out there and play that underdog role, BJ, for every game this year. And for Georgia and Alabama's used to being 100, BJ, and they can handle it. I don't know how well Georgia can deal with it because that's how a team like a South Carolina can come in and beat a Georgia when they flying high. But we'll see what happens. But Florida going to have to go out there and do what they normally do, play that underdog role and try to come out, with that big dub in Jacksonville.
I don't know how a conversation on who could derail things in the SEC championship got me drug into it.
You ain't drug into it. I was blessed enough to do a speaking engagement in Gainesville one time, and they was asking me what I do now, and I said I'm blessed enough to be, on the radio with Kevin Thomas and BJ. They said Kevin Thomas. Yeah, that's Dan Mullen's nephew. Yeah. So.
Y'all definitely get your khaki shorts at the same time.
What it was is somebody said, because when I went to see Kevin Thomas play at the church, Kevin Thomas, he on Sundays, the pleats. Yeah, he ain't, taper leg at the bottom. Yeah, he takes his, penny loafers with the penny in it. Kevin takes his, they say they try to get you to wear some Jordans, and Kevin said, if it ain't New Balance, it ain't me. So, Dan Mullen is only wearing Jumpman because it's mandated. He's contractually obligated because he has all white Nikes with the tube socks written all over him. All over him. Kevin, that's a great look.
It is a solid look. I think more people can embrace it. We got more to come. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, PJ, and Ben. Glad you are with us online, ESPNCoastal.com. We are live streaming Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as well. And you can hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, at Pigskin Radio. BJ, we were talking obviously a lot of football in the Southeastern Conference. You mentioned Florida, a team that could shake things up in the East over Georgia. Not going to have Kyle Trask. He's on to the NFL. You got a nice piece there, southernpigskin.com, about Kyle Trask and kind of his journey to now awaiting to see where he'll be drafted.
Yeah, to me, he's a really fascinating prospect in terms of sort of the traditional things you look for out of a first round pick at quarterback. He's 6'5", 240. He's been the leader of a contending team, and statistically, he just did some things that, quite frankly, we have not seen in a long time, if not ever, from a quarterback in the SEC at Florida in the relative time frame of what he just did. But I found something interesting. Here's a full list of Power 5 quarterbacks over the past 10 years to have a season with a passer rating of 180 or above. Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, RG3, Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones, Marcus Mariota, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Cam Newton, Tua, Kyle Trask, Russell Wilson, and Jameis. Now, of the 10 quarterbacks on that list who are already in the NFL, 8 of them were first-round picks. 5 of them were selected number 1 overall, and all but 2 of them were chosen in the top 5. And when you think about that passer rating of 180 for a season being kind of the measure of elite quarterback prospects, it's interesting that the 2 current players on that list, in addition to Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, obviously, and Justin Fields, they are considered top half of the first-round picks, probably top 10 picks. Trask is not. And I do agree, as I referenced earlier, this is a generational quarterback class. If you want to tell me Trask is the 5th or 6th best quarterback, I can buy that for the 2021 NFL draft class. But I don't understand why he's not considered a first-round pick. I don't understand why there's not any hype around him. And when you look when you itemize out the, I guess, traits you look for being in a top quarterback prospect, he's big, he's strong, he's successful. He elevated the status quo of his team, helped them compete on a national level. He has almost unparalleled proficiency numbers. I believe some more kind of statistical frame of reference data here. He, Drew Lock, and Tua Tagovailoa, along with Joe Burrow, are the only SEC quarterbacks ever with 43 touchdown passes in a season. Well, Burrow, Lock, and Tua are all starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So if you go off kind of the statistical suggestions, Kyle Trask has every single thing that projects him out to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's kind of hard to understand why the buzz isn't there around him.
BJ, at a certain point, you got to start asking yourself, like, why, certain players don't get the benefit of the doubt than other players do, but then you got to look at the position they play. When's the last time a big-time quarterback coming out of the University of Florida not named Tim Tebow got any buzz? It's been a long time, and that's the thing. What one player will get, another player will not get. I don't like when people will say, oh, well, you look at what Kyle Trask has done. He's just benefiting from that system. Well, name a quarterback that doesn't benefit from the system that they play in. Oh, he's only benefiting because he had Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney. Well, I would hope that you would benefit from the guys around you. But the thing about Kyle Trask is he's what you look for in a quarterback, right? A guy that came into college, nothing was given to him. A guy that was supposed to – he had Texas A&M written all over him. I mean, his mom and dad went to Texas A&M. He got named after Kyle Field. That's why his name is Kyle. Went to Florida. So did not get recruited by the current coach. Went through the down years at Florida. Still was a great teammate. Then when the new coach came in, waited his time, didn't make waves, didn't talk bad about why he wasn't playing, and finished his career a Heisman Trophy finalist. If that's not an NFL-ready quarterback, I don't know what is. And I get it. I'm not taking nothing away from Trevor. I'm not taking nothing away from Justin Fields, a Trey Lance, a Zach Wilson, a Mac Jones. But why doesn't Mac Jones get the benefit of those guys around him and a guy like Kyle won't? So, go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you why. Mac Jones played in the playoffs. Look at the guys that are going in the top couple of spots here, BJ. And you could say, well, what about Kyle Trask? Kyle Trask, not necessarily flashy in the way he plays, right? He's just a solid quarterback. But Trevor Lawrence lot of experience playing in the playoffs. Clemson, a top program, has made some big plays. Justin Fields, a lot of experience in big games, made some big plays in the playoffs at the college football level. Zach Wilson, big plays, flashy, plays with a little flash, and I think that's why people like him, because he moves around and has made some big throws. Mac Jones, he plays at Alabama, right? So there you're like, hey, a pro system with pro players. He may have a pro wide receiving group around him at Alabama. We know how he'll expect what he's walking into and what he's prepared for playing at Alabama. You look at Trey Lance, playoffs at the FCS level, has won big time, I believe one national championship game there. So you have some of that. Kyle Trask, again, the numbers are there, but doesn't have some of that stuff that you could say makes him the differentiator to say, why is he not talked about like those other guys? I think that's some of it, not all of it, but I think that's some of it. Why, when you talk about Kyle Trask, it's not in the same light necessarily as those other guys I mentioned.
And I struggle with some of that, and I don't think that attention or hype is mutually exclusive, right? I mean, I think you can say, hey, Zach Wilson deserves some hype, but so does Kyle Trask. But the idea that, you know, the signature moment wasn't there and kind of the stats are macro are there. I mean, are we forgetting about a couple of performances here? Kyle Trask against Georgia was 30 of 43 for 474 yards and 4 touchdowns. He averaged 11 yards per pass attempt. That is relatively unheard of, especially against a defense like Georgia. If that wasn't enough, I know you mentioned Alabama and maybe Trask wasn't able to beat them, not in the playoffs. Well, it wasn't because of Kyle Trask. Against Alabama, Kyle Trask was 26 of 40 for 408 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it's hard for me to see those kind of milestone performances, see a Zach Wilson, for example, struggle in his showcase game against Coastal Carolina and not at least wonder why Trask isn't getting some buzz.
When you come out and who you come out with, I mean, has a lot to do with the buzz that you do get. And the whole thing about it is this. Yeah, Kyle Trask, he did not go to the college football playoff. Kyle Trask did not win the playoff game. Kyle Trask is in New York. Virtually, he would have been in New York had it been a regular year, because they consider him one of the top players in the country. He was considered when he was up for the running. Now, he lost to Devonta Smith, and that's fine. But the whole thing about it is, Kevin, it just comes back to the fact that
he also finished behind guys who are projected to go ahead of him in the draft.
Well, this is the thing. I'm not even who's going to go in front of him is fine. Like, there's 32 opportunities to go first round, right? 32 opportunities. When you start looking around at the quarterback position and how they be evaluated, let's be honest, we don't know why certain guys do and certain guys don't. So they'll pick certain guys and you'll just go with it. I mean, I keep coming back to the whole Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance never threw a pick in college. He played in one game in 2020. Do you think if Kyle Trask played what Trey Lance played, they will be even considering him? No. So I just think that when you if I'm Kyle Trask, I would ask myself, okay, what else should I have needed to do? Should I have needed to beat Alabama? Because we didn't lose against Alabama because of me. We lost because we can't stop Najee Harris. Because you go back to his performance, he was still balling. If you were Kyle Trask, think about this. We only know who Kyle Trask is because of what he did at Florida. We did not know him before he got there. I did not know him in the recruiting. Some of these guys, I knew Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Some of these guys,
but Ben, let me ask you about this too, because I've heard some people say, "Oh, well, come on, man, Florida lost 4 games, I think it was." But I'm looking at it right here. In Florida's 4 losses, they scored 38 points against Texas A&M. Kyle Trask threw for 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. They scored 34 points against LSU. Kyle Trask threw for 474 yards and 2 touchdowns. He threw for 408 yards as Florida scored 46 against Alabama, and Trask had 3 touchdowns in that game. Now the Cotton Bowl was bad. There were unique circumstances there, and he got benched essentially for Emory Jones, and I think we all acknowledged that was kind of an outlier. But in the other 3 losses, he was elite, if not like National Player of the Week good. And this is not an indictment of the other guys. I'm a big fan of all the other prospects. But I think if you take Mac Jones off of Alabama, is Alabama still contending for a national title?
Yes.
If you take Kyle Trask off of Florida based on what they did last year, does Florida make a bowl game?
No. And the thing about it is this. I mean, certain players go into the season with different expectations. And if you are Florida this year, you say, look, we got to beat Georgia, we got to win the East, and see what happens in Atlanta. Well, they did those things. Yes, they did lose to LSU, but it goes back to something my former teammate Ben Hartsock said. He said, if a guy is 6'5", he got to prove he cannot play football. When he's 6 feet, he got to prove he can. They are treating Kyle Trask like he's a 5'9" quarterback that can't see over his offensive line. Like if you just hear about Kyle Trask, you've never seen him play, but he must not be that good. That's he was a Heisman Trophy candidate. What? Yeah. So Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields,
and look, and look, Florida would have made a bowl game last year if Trask wasn't there. But what I'm getting at here is Kevin is you had a player who threw the most passes of any quarterback in the country, and he had to do that because whether it was scheme or whatever, you didn't even try to run the football.
Sure.
I mean, you didn't even try to run the football. So when you look at kind of the again the itemized checklist of what you want from a quarterback. And this has nothing to do with the other guys. I think all the other guys are great. But what is there that's troubling or that's concerning about Kyle Trask?
I would just say this. When people start saying things like that Dan Mullen's offense, right? And they'll say, well, it's catered to what Kyle Trask does. No, I think Kyle Trask just brought it to the forefront. Felipe Franks won the Heisman Trophy candidate. And when I keep on coming back to that because look at who he's up against. Arguably the greatest receiver we ever seen, right? Who won it? One of the best quarterbacks since he came to college. And he wasn't going to win. Kyle Trask was not going to win. But I just think that when you're looking for a quarterback, right, I want a quarterback that got it the hard way at a school that's one of the premier schools in the country and the hardest conference in the country with some of the best competition in the country. Because here's the thing. People go back to that Georgia game, right? The best player not named Kyle Trask didn't even play the second half. And they still won it. I'm just saying, BJ, I'm not here to act as if Kyle Trask is going to get drafted. I mean, he's going to be one of the blessed people that's going to get drafted. But to say he's not in the same, round with these other guys, that's what I don't get. Because if Kyle Trask not in the round, outside of Justin Fields and outside of Trevor Lawrence, he's just as good as Mac Jones. He's just as good as Trey Lance. He's just as good as Zach Wilson. Because all I'm saying is when Zach Wilson shared the same field with Kyle Trask, he didn't play better.
Well, but I think in a lot of the outside of Zach Wilson, which a lot of people who've watched college football say, I don't really get why Zach Wilson is the number one guy. I think Kyle Trask is being put in there pretty favorably with those other guys you mentioned. Obviously not with Lawrence and Justin Fields. I think they have a lot more tape and a lot more college on-field experience than Trask does. But I think seems to me like there's a pretty good shot that Kyle Trask is going to go in the first round to somebody that needs a quarterback. So, I don't know if he's being totally disrespected, but again, you have both said you don't think he's the same as Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. All right, so he's already down at 3. I mean, we can argue about Zach Wilson. I think Trey Lance has a year and a game on tape. I think that's pretty comparable in terms of what you can look at with Kyle Trask. And you say Kyle Trask probably has played better in bigger standing ball games than Trey Lance. I think he's going to end up being right there in that discussion with the Mac Jones and Trey Lance in that realm in terms of who gets drafted first. It's just a matter of who likes him in that spot. I don't think he's being vastly underrated outside of the top 2 or 3 guys, which I don't think is necessarily unfair to him.
No, the whole thing about it, that's what I'm saying about comparison. When I look at a quarterback, I look for 3 things. If you can do these 3 things, you can play for me. 1, can you make the throws? Check. Do you boost the resume of the team you own? Check. Can you handle the heat? Can you handle adversity? Check. Kyle Trask can do all those things. Felipe Franks went to Arkansas not because he couldn't compete. He wasn't going to beat Kyle Trask. All I'm saying, BJ, is this. Name another quarterback at a big-time university that went through what Kyle Trask went through and succeeded. I'm just saying, we'll see.
We will see. No combine to kind of get another look at those guys. They'll have some pro days, but no combine to see any of those guys kind of line up head-to-head at all. We'll come back. We've got more to come. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Again, appreciate Brandon Scoop B. Robinson joining us here on the program. Also, home team Brandon Leak joined us here on 3 and Out, talking some Hawks basketball as they're back in action tonight. A flurry of games before they get to the All-Star break coming up next week. Again, if you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com. Go to our YouTube page at ESPN Coastal on YouTube, and you can watch the show there, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can catch the show conversation. You can always hit us up on a Twitter at Pigskin Radio, and you can argue with Ben and BJ about Kyle Trask and where he belongs.
I mean, I'm just still in complete agreement with Ben that you're Dan Mullen's nephew. I can't get past that.
Yeah, speaking of nephew, man, shout out to my nephew Joshua True. My brother told me to get a shout out. Dan Mullen's nephew. His name
See you tomorrow, 3 and Out.